Minister of Britain, Part 2. Let's continue reading, shall we? Well, the once popular belief that Britain was largely covered with forest until cleared by the Anglo-Saxons is now discredited. By the Roman conquest, although there was still a great deal of natural forest, the population had already grown to something of the order it was under the Romans, 2 or 3 times greater than during the reign of William the Conqueror, 1066 until 787. The proportion of forest open, settled landscape had dropped to the level of the later Middle Ages. From about 1300 BC, what was to become the classic Aragonese pattern had started to take shape. Hill forts, isolated farms or groups of farms, sometimes amounting to villages, often surrounded by small enclosures, large expanses of permanent fields, woodland and great open stretches of pasture. In the last 600 years before Caesar, Britain adopted many of the characteristics of the successive phases of the continental Iron Age. Too often with insular variations, this has led to unresolved debate among the prehistorians as to whether the changes that succeeded one another primarily reflect actual invasions on a substantial scale, the arrival of relatively small numbers of influential or conquering newcomers as later the Normans, or the change of ideas through travel and trade. But whatever the mechanism, Britain had reached a point by Caesar's time where, as he himself says, the tribes he met in the parts he penetrated, the south and east, were very similar to those he encountered in Gaul. Beyond these, archaeology reveals that there were some less advanced peoples, but all of them seem to have shared the same British version of the Celtic language and a broadly similar culture. There is some reason to think that the tribal system we find in Britain in Claudian times was not fully developed in Caesar's, and there are other important changes in the period between the Roman invasions, which we shall examine later. In southern Gaul, the native tribes had largely passed from rule by kings to elective magistracies and tribal councils, but in northern Gaul kingship was still common when Caesar arrived. In Britain it was to remain so down to Claudius, though there are some signs of joint or divided rule by pairs of kings. Society divided broadly into warrior aristocracy and a largely agricultural commons. The priests, the Druids, were a third group whose position and function is debated, though for Britain at least evidence is against the popular notion of their having a prominent political role. The Celts were characterized by quarrelsomeness, both within the tribe and in their indulgence in intertribal warfare. Only on rare occasions, in the face of great danger, would Celtic tribes combine to choose a single leader, though in Gaul, at least there was some tradition of periodic gatherings of prominent men from various tribes. There was little or no national sentiment. By Caesar's day, close relationships had been established between southern Britain and northern Gaul. The pattern of archaeological finds reveals 2 main groups of routes by which goods and people travelled between the countries. The most important at this time was between Brittany and Lower Normandy, in ancient times known collectively as Armorica. In southwest Britain, particularly through a port of Hengistbury, heading Dorset. The other routes were from Upper Normandy and the Low Countries, the lands between the mouths of the Seine and Rhine, to southern and eastern England. Caesar moreover reports that, with him living memory, a Gallic ruler had exercised power in Britain as well as his own homeland, and he was not only to find British contingents fighting alongside his Gallic enemies, but to be thwarted by fugitives seeking refuge from Rome with friends or kin across the Channel. To understand why Caesar was in call and what may have prompted his campaigns in Britain, we need to look briefly at the condition of Rome at this time. Rome's expansion in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC, from being an Italian city-state to the greatest power in the Mediterranean, had been under her traditional form of government. This was theoretically democratic with assemblies of the people and annually elected magistrates. But in practice, public office was held century after century by a relatively small number of aristocratic families. The Senate, nationally an advisory body, came to have a dominant role, being composed of magistrates and all of those who had previously been elected to the qualifying magistracies. The highest offices, the 2 annual consulships, were almost exclusively held by an even smaller group within the senatorial class, and its families possessed special prestige. Religious and social attitudes, closely intertwined, placed a very high value on veneration of the family ancestors and the preservation of family honor. It was a characteristic of the classical world that a man's reputation, what his peers thought of him, was of the highest importance. At Rome, the individual aristocrat was under constant pressure, both for family duty and personal ambition, to emulate his forebears by pursuing public career and by striving for the highest office. Reputation has won by success primarily in 2 fields, the law and the army. The senatorial career normally included posts in each area. After 2 proven military prowess won the greater prestige. Holding certain senior offices, even below the consulship, brought with it eligibility to command armies and command provinces abroad. Caesar's contemporary, the orator, politician, and moralist Cicero, states categorically what conferred the greatest personal status. There was more glory to be won by extending the empire than by administering it. In the ancient world, wars conquest usually showed a handsome profit for the victor. The immense wealth brought into Rome by her conquests and the opportunities and temptations offered by a Mediterranean empire put intolerable strains on the political and social system that had been adequate for a small Italian state. By the middle of the 1st century BC, the Roman Republic was falling apart. The old conventions within the governing class could not cope. Ambitions to join the select few at the top had been replaced by an inability to tolerate even equals in power and fame. And thank you, and have a nice day or evening.